Hello, my name's Alina Gayo. I'm going to be doing a video about a misconception that is still kind of talked about today. It's about, do we really use only 10% of our brains? And I'm going to be talking about mainly how did this misconception came to be, what about this misconception, and parts of our brain that helps clear this up more, and how you can use your brain's total capacity. Alright, so there actually is no real pinpoint origin to this myth. It's initially thought out by Albert Einstein, who's a famous philosopher, very intelligent, and it's known for his studies. William James is a psychiatrist who's known for the unconscious and conscious studies. He did a human study in 1890s with Boris Sidis. It's Boris Sidis' son who was the human study studied on, and his name was William James Sidis, and was known to or smartest living man between the IQ of 200 and 350. This was because he knew he knew many languages. He was accepted into Harvard at the age of 9, and so William James concluded that since nobody else was doing this, he concluded that we do not use our brain's full potential. And some people believe that this misconception is still true. 2/3 or 65% of the population still actually believe this, and I don't know why. Half of the science teachers, not really here in Northern America or United States, mainly like Norway, Sweden, a lot of places still out there do believe that that we only use 10% of our brain, and this is why anatomy is going to prove that theory wrong, because we're going to know the different functions of the brain and what the brain is made out of. The fMRI scans that show how the brain conducts electricities, and the PET scans show brain activity as well. And I'm saying all humans' brains share the same design, and we'll come back to that. So obviously the brain's main function is attention, being alert, high reasoning, critical thinking, language. You can learn more than one language, learning, memory, perception. And this is all thanks to the neurons in your brain, your brain is composed of billions of neurons, 100 billion actually. And these neurons fire and synapse constantly to the point where your brain has to require lots of glucose or ATP. And ATP is made by glucose, and glucose is then going into aerobic respiration where it makes ATP to provide energy. Sodium and potassium ion pumps through the membranes of the brain to maintain an electrical charge. If you remember, a neuron starts at a resting potential, depolarizes, repolarizes, and hyperpolarizes. Sparse coding is the representation of items of the strong activation of the relatively small set of neurons, because not all neurons fire. You'll see more in a certain area than some other ones, but they are all working together. And by that, if you remember, the neurons are the ones that generate the action potentials by sending it from the dendritic branches to the dendrites, to the cell body, to the axon that transmits the electrical current, and the synaptic terminals release acetylcholine to the next neuron to start the action potential to the next one. And these neurons get helped by the neuroglia cells, which are all over the central nervous system, and there's different types. There's the astrocytes, which are connected to capillaries. You have oligodendrocytes, who are heavily myelinated, which means they work very fast. The microglia cells, the epidermal cells, all of these help produce very fast conductions of electrical systems, and they transmit information to other cells, even muscles and gland cells in the spinal cord. Most of these neurons contain nucleus and cytoplasm. The axon extends from the cell body, and often messages from other neurons, synapses, and contract points where one neuron communicates with another. The dendrites are covered in synapses, which are formed by the ends of axons from other axons. And so I wanted to mention where these neurons are located exactly, because I feel like everyone knows that they're in the brain, but they don't really know where exactly in the brain, and I feel like that's important to say too. So both the brain and the spinal cord are covered in gray matter and white matter. The brain is going to be covered with white matter in the middle, and gray matter on the outer end, while the spinal cord is the opposite. So the gray matter is actually where the neurons are, and the white matter is where those long axon terminals are going to be composed of more of the nerve fibers that are there. Let me show you the next picture. If you can see, majority of the brain share the same design. When I said I'm going to come back to this, it's because if you notice, majority of these brains are very rigid and have deep sulci and gyri, and this increases the potential of the brain to have more packed neurons into the cortex, so that it helps it store more information. And as you can see, the human brain is highly packed with very rigid, and unlike the rabbit, who has a smooth brain, is not considered to be very smart because it doesn't have any gyri to help pack these neurons in, and it basically means that we can fit more space into our head, and we can do more complex tasks, and while the rabbit really can't. So smooth brains are bad. So it's not necessarily I got a bigger brain which makes me smarter than a rabbit. It's because I have more sulci than the rabbit. The elephant brain is bigger and larger than a human brain, but at the end of the day, we all know that humans are smarter than an elephant. And this is because we can contain more information in our cortex. So parts of the brains that I wanted to mention are the frontal lobe, which is what makes you, gives you your personality, has to do with movement, critical thinking, reasoning, behavioral, emotional, memory, speaking. I don't know if you remember that guy that got a tube stuck through his head. If we really only use 10% of our brain, the whole reason why your brain would still work is because you have other parts in your brain that can still function. We have the brainstem, which is the medulla, controlling the breathing, blood pressure, heart rate, swallowing. And then the occipital lobe has to do just with vision, and if you're colorblind as well. The parietal lobe has to do with sensation, reading, understanding special relationships. The temporal lobe, which is right down here because it's on the sides, understanding, language, behavior, also memory and hearing, of course, because it's right next to your ear. And the cerebellum is for balance and coordination, fine control, muscle movement as well. So total capacity, everyone feels like the movie Limitless and the movie Lucy, they used their brain's total capacity and they got to do psychic abilities and powerful things that we wish we can do, but unfortunately we don't use that. Sadly, it would be cool, don't get me wrong. The brain uses, like I said, it uses a lot of energy, or ATP, so it needs a lot of glucose. So it uses 20% of our glucose in adults, and then it uses 50% in children, which is why they say children are like sponges, because they literally are, because they're growing and their brain is creating more room for information, while infants, it's even more, it's 60%. So if you want to learn a new language, I mean, you can still learn it anytime. It's never too late to learn anything new. It's just better to learn it at a younger age because you retain more information easily. Now that you are past those ages, as an adult, you can still read, which will help memory, help you learn. You can do arithmetic problems. I know, it sounds boring, but yeah. And then you can also even get boosts by neurotransmitters, which can increase your brain function as well. Neurotransmitters travel through the nervous system, and adrenaline is one of them. They're not like hormones that travel through the blood. They're the ones that travel through the nervous system. So adrenaline stimulates the nervous system and causes total focus. This is a medication that is used for people with ADHD. A neurotransmitter as well that is naturally in your body but is triggered and gives a sense of pleasure and reward, and it slows everything down. You get a little bit of it when you eat like chocolate or coffee, but if you do cocaine or dope, that's when you get like a lot of it, and that can be really hazardous. And so you can get Parkinson's disease or depression if you don't have enough dopamine though. And a better way to get dopamine would be through exercise instead. And then I would also say don't forget to exercise your brain. And then here are my references. And I hope you guys have a good one. Thank you.